Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Nipun, and I'm delighted to be your host for the first conversation, the very first in the Law of Love webinar series commemorating Gandhi's 152nd birthday. So welcome and thank you for joining us. The purpose of these calls is really to share stories that plant seeds for a more compassionate society, while also fostering our own inner transformation. So we do this through collective conversations like this one with guest speakers from all walks of life who inspire us to live a more service-oriented life. So thank you for being here. Behind each one of these calls, there's a fantastic team of service-based volunteers that make all this possible. So we're grateful to them. And today, of course, our special guest speaker is Vallabh Bhanshali. Thanks again to all of you for joining us for today's call. Before we begin, we always like to start with a little minute of silence to anchor ourselves. So I'd invite all of us to just take a minute in silence. Thank you. Welcome again to our Law of Love webinar series. It was actually inspired by a very specific quote by Gandhiji. I'll read it out for you here verbatim. It says, "Just as a scientist will work wonders out of the various applications of the laws of nature, a man who applies the laws of love with scientific precision can work greater wonders. Nonviolence is infinitely more wonderful and subtle than forces of nature, like, for instance, electricity. The law of love is a far greater science than any modern science." And of course, it's a very intriguing quote, and a lot of us feel like we want to resonate with it, but we know Babave, Gandhi's successor, actually made it very concrete. He gave the example of a hand, and he says, just as we have five fingers to really evoke this law of love in society, all these five fingers need to work together. And the five fingers are, your thumb being community, then education, business, nonprofit, and government and leadership is the fifth one. When five of these forces work together, we really are primed to awaken this law of love. So today we're exploring that capacity with a really remarkable guest, Vallabh Bhanshali. As we start our conversation, if at any point any of you have any questions or comments, you can just submit the chat form on the chat form. I guess I'm not saying it right, but on the live stream page, there's a little form. You can submit that in the comments. We'll make it to the moderators here. You can also just email ask@servicespace.org. And yeah, I think that's all the logistical information. Now we get to the fun part. Most of you have probably read everything about Vallabh. We put a lot out there, and a lot of you might already know of him or have heard of him. He has been a pioneering and towering personality in the world of investment banking, in India especially. He's the co-founder and chairman of the Enam Group. He's co-founder of the Desh Apnaye Sahyog Foundation, trustee of the Bombay Stock Exchange. And if I start reading all these things, it'll take a very long time. So I won't go there, but he is someone who also, in addition to all his accomplishments, is also deeply drawn to spirituality. He's somebody who from a very young age has been asking the deeper questions of life, has been a meditator for many, many years, and he considers himself to be a seeker of truth within. So welcome, Vallabh. It's really an honor to have you on the call.
Thank you very much. I think it's an absolute privilege to be speaking to you and to be associated with your wonderful organization, Service Space. And this extraordinary initiative invoked by that Gandhiji's quote that you read, and how wonderful it is. And I'm sure that over the next few minutes, we will have a chance to talk about it. So very, very delighted, intrigued, and nervous.
Fantastic. Well, when we spoke prior to the call, you mentioned something, and we want to start with this. You mentioned that your absolute favorite verse from a sacred scripture was actually from the Upanishads. And so we want to open with that. one of our volunteers is actually kindly offered to sing it for us to start our time together. So, and then after that, I want to ask you to reflect on why that is your favorite. So, before we do that, Jagrati, can we have you share the prayer?
Hari Om. ईशावास्यम् इदं सर्वं यत्किञ्च जगत्यां जगत् तेन त्यक्तेन भुञ्जीथाः मा गृध कस्य स्विद्धनम् ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः God pervades in this world and that, enveloping everything that's ephemeral and permanent. So renounce and rejoice. Don't covet someone's wealth. Detach and liberate from the cycle of birth and death. Renounce and rejoice. Detach and liberate. Renounce and rejoice. Detach and liberate. Renounce and rejoice. Detach and liberate. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Shri Guru Pyo Namaha Hari Om.
Thank you, Jagrati. This is very special. Vallabh, I'm sure you know, but there's a very, I paraphrase Gandhi, but he said this particular verse was very near and dear to him. He said, if all the scriptures in the entire planet were to turn to ashes, and if we just remembered this one verse, it would be enough to preserve the sacred. And this also happens to be one of your favorites. And so I was wondering if we can if I can invite you to start there and just share why this is so meaningful to you and what it represents to you.
So firstly, I think Jagrati were absolutely fabulous. After a long time, I heard the recitation of this shloka, and you rendered it so beautifully with so much passion, meaning, English translation, wonderful. And thank you also, Nipun Bhai. I must admit, I didn't know that this was Gandhiji's favorite too. But just by and by, I realized that, how this was the quintessence of all spiritual knowledge. All the isms of the world are contained in one shloka. So let us, without much ado, there is an order. And we can't recognize the order. And therefore, we try and impose our order, my ownership, my farm, my business, my reputation, etc., etc. And we fail to see this wide order, which is, I don't have to talk about it. We see the order every day, day and night, the seasons and whatnot. Since we don't understand it, we can't harmonize ourselves with it. So this Rishi, he just summed it up. He said, just, give it up. there is an order. Everything that you can see, conceive is a part of an order. And enjoy. Good part as consumers, we're born as consumers. He says, consume, no issue. It's all there to be consumed by you. But just remember, don't try and own it, renounce it. With that sense of renunciation, that is like a stream that flows by. It does not own the land. It just flows by the land, over the land. It nourishes, it starves, it goes down, goes up. It just flows. Yeah. With that attitude of just fluency into this world. And then this just beautifully, kind of morphs into a kind of, it is manifested in the other Hindu saying, Aham Brahmasmi, I am the universe. That once you get this magic of renunciation, without having to stop consuming, consume, but have the sense of renunciation, all the difficulties that come along, when we lose sense of proportion, when we lose sense of ownership, all the ills come from that. A child can have anything to its heart's content and it remains uncontaminated. It's only when he wants to possess the toys, he'll go to anybody's house, break anybody's toy. He doesn't make a distinction between my toy or somebody else's toy.
Yeah.
As long as that I does not come. And that's what renunciation is. And then second part, the last part, it says, oh, if you covet this possession, you don't renounce, you become a thief because you are not in this world to own anything. You can't own anything. So don't try and own, don't try and possess, don't try and create your own order, because inevitably you will get punished in various ways. So I just found it, whether it is capitalism, whether it is socialism, whatever ism theory you put, it's all contained in there. And again, and as I, it just came to me that, such a beautiful summary, every day, every moment, you can apply it and make your life blissful and easy.
Yeah, well, you know that it sounds like such a great aspiration, but you have done it in the world of business, which I think is very fascinating. But before we even go into that, I'm curious, what is it that got you interested in even holding this idea of letting go? The world is telling us to cling. The world is telling us to hold on to permanence and not flow with impermanence. And so what was it? I remember we had a conversation and you were sharing how you read a book. I mean, if I'm not mistaken, you grew up a Jain. Maybe you still identify as a Jain. You practice Buddhist meditation. But it was this book when you were 19 that you read by Vinoba Bhave, and halfway through the book, you said, I was a changed man. And so I wonder if you can speak a little bit to the seeds of what has prompted this even aspiration in you to renounce.
So I was in a depressed state when I started reading the book, because I was desperately looking for something that would take me out of my depression. And my depression came from my own mistakes and so on, but you want to save your reputation and you're fighting, your order versus nature's order. And halfway through the book, it was Gita, and we know it to be the great book on karma and primarily, but so many other things. And then the rest are all what we call varieties of karma, whether it is karma sannyas yoga or bhakti yoga, etc. There are all kinds of different karma. But I recognized one thing, the truth, that what was I fighting? I was fighting, there was one reality of Vallabh, and there was another reality of Vallabh. Vallabh wanted to suppress one reality and let the other reality prevail. And I said, that is the problem. You create one reality. If you know, you failed, and you succeeded, you start examining that reality also, that what does that success mean? And I think that state of mind, it started with practical truth, that if I am not a good student, I'm not a good student. I don't know something, and therefore I'm not a good student. I change the knowledge part, I'll become a good student. It's as simple as that. But if I don't know and I still want to be a good student, it's not possible. it started with that, and then started the whole process of examination of truths all around us. That, oh, what is the truth of this order? What is the truth of this family relationship? What is the truth of why I came into this life? What have I got? Why have I got? And just that examination of the truths, that, there is an apparent truth, there is a desirable truth, and then there's the real truth. And that's been a journey. And then you walked it, you're far ahead of me, Nipunbhai. So I don't think I've achieved anything. But we're just trying to understand this and align ourselves in all the aspects of our life more and more with this, if I did not start my life, right? The big reality which we never recognize or accept is we did not start our life. There was some reason for which we came into this world. We don't question that reason, but we just want to be a consumer of this life. It doesn't matter if I'm 2-legged or 3-legged or 4-legged. I have 1 kidney, 2 kidneys, whatever be my state. I just want to consume and enjoy. But the biggest question is, why did it start? And that's how the spiritual journey became more serious. Wow. And just trying to take step at a time.
and mind you, you were 19 at the time when you read this book. And this book was Talks on the Gita by Vinoba Bhave. Just an excellent book. So one of the things I always find interesting about looking at an arc of a life is all too often, especially with successful people like you, where we tend to draw simplistic cause and effect relations. Like, oh, this effect happened in your life. Well, what was the cause? Well, that was because I did this or I did this and then this happened. But actually, there's multiple causes to everything. So to give a contextual idea of who you were, your early life, your mom passed away when you were very young. Your father was actually a very important figure in your life. But what really got me curious was how you were gifted something. It was an unexpected act of kindness and generosity. And you had shared the story earlier, which I was very touched by, from a neighbor, I think, that gave you a room to stay for 3 years. That actually ended up shaping who you have become. So I wonder if you can, that's saying a lot of the early years, but I wonder if you can share a little bit about some of the contextual forces that helped you become who you are today.
So I think once, for whatever reason, you start examining your gifts. So, because you asked me a question about one act of kindness, and probably one thought of as something which was not usual or you did not have much right on. But actually speaking, I have had so many gifts. So when my mother passed away, my brother, who was only 3.5 years older than me or less, me and my younger brother, a few days after my mother passed away, maybe second day or something, he just put his arms around us. And he said, "I am your mother."
Wow.
Now, someone who is, just 16, 17, does that to kids who don't understand what that sentence means. It means so much. And he lived it. He became a hero. He became a protector, affection. I could do so many things in my life because of my brother. My sister, I had 3 sisters, but one of them, she would give up anything just to be with us. She had so many difficulties in her own life, but she was always there as the mother for us. So while we lost one, we got 2. So only if we recognized, this is extraordinary. And then, I had an uncle and aunt, who had their own life. But because my father had brought my uncle when he was young and, his family was in difficulty, so he brought him and trained him. And then they stayed with us for 9 years to look after us. And then they went their way. Now, how can we forget that? So if you start recognizing there are so many acts of kindness, and then this neighbor, since we were constrained for space, and my father and our family was always hospitable, inviting all kinds of people in their medical difficulties, studies, whatnot, very lovingly. So we saw all this love spread by my father, my mother, my family. And then this neighbor most unexpectedly said, oh, yeah, he's a good kid, wants to study for his CA. You can use our room. And that spare room became my ashram. And I was in a state of mind, blessed by Vinobaji. And then you got a space to, somehow cultivate and expand those thoughts. That one room became an ashram. So my life is full of, Nipun Bhai, that once you start recognizing that, who is giving you what, you can't even lift your head. You can't open your mouth. You're so overwhelmed by all the kindness that the world has for you.
Yeah. No, that's beautiful. You spent three plus years there, and you're calling it an ashram. Can you share what happened? Like, what did you discover about yourself in that room?
So, when you live in a joint family, you don't have private space.
Yeah.
This room was the first experience, though, my brother and my, nephew, they shared the space, but I was kind of, the leader. And so I got this sense of private space, and, I can do something with it. So I got the room painted by and by. I put some photographs in it. And then I had all this idealism, so I was suffused with idealism at that point of time. And I would just talk to my, my younger brother and this nephew of mine. So the whole atmosphere was full of such positive vibrancy. And I have, and I can recommend this, I can't recommend this enough, is this Thoughts of Power by Vivekanand.
Oh, yeah.
One small book. I used to buy it for 25, paise, which you can't even put in cents. It's probably less than 1 cent or, something like that. And I bought hundreds of those copies to give to others. And I would read that book morning, evening, and just winding myself up more and more. And, so it was an extraordinary period, Nipun Bhai. And what it can do just to inspire people, not to boast, because it's not me. It is these forces. As you said, the laws of love are more powerful than any physical laws. Once you put your mind in a certain state and you nourish it with certain thoughts, what can happen? I was a struggling student at BCom, and that was my worry, that my reputation will be ruined, or people will discover I'm not as good as I was perceived to be. And then whatever changed. I did my CA. I did so well that my 4-year course became a 3-year course. I pursued my LLB on the parallel, and I taught my college there. And all along, I was reading at least 50 books on literature, on philosophy, on psychology, on religion, and nothing was enough. I mean, I knew CA is nothing. Like CA is the toughest exam in India. And well, I said, it's okay. How can they fail me? If I know my stuff, how can they fail me? So what your mind is capable of, once you open it, once you surrender it to these forces of such amazing people like Gandhiji, Vinobaji, Nipun Mehtaji, it's extraordinary.
That's remarkable and inspiring, actually. And you, of course, your arc. Then you went into business and achieved a lot. I think the title that these larger forces have given this call is Profit and Love. I think that's a very curious place to practice these values. I mean, life. It seems like life sort of planted you in these places. For a lot of people, those seem to be contradictory. That how can you practice love, compassion, kindness? How can you be mindful of, deeper truths, or even aspire to that in such a muddled up context of very mixed incentives? So how, for you, what is your experience now, as you progress a little further and now you enter the business world, you succeed in the business world, and you meet, you're surrounded by a lot of different challenges in that world. How did you reconcile your inner pursuits of alignment with this deeper order, these deeper values, and perhaps a lack of alignment on the outside? Like, how did you reconcile those forces?
This kind of clarity came to me much later, but that clarity probably in an inarticulate manner was probably there. So when I started NM, I told my colleagues, and I had absolutely wonderful colleagues. So, all the success of NM is due to all my wonderful colleagues and partners. And, I was the prime mischief maker primarily. And so I told them, I said, guys, can we be the person we want to deal with? As simple as that. Mm. Do you want to deal with someone who's untrustworthy? Do you want to deal with someone who is going to measure every ounce of what he has to deliver and what he has to take? Would you want to deal with a person who you cannot depend on in case of difficulty? If not, be the person you want to deal with. Mm. And I was extremely lucky that I had colleagues and all who kind of understood these things. And I also told them that, look, a lot of moneyed people don't have reputation. But if we build a reputation, money will follow us. Hmm. And so with these two principles, and these are the two principles which you will recognize are not in conflict with business. They are in alignment with the highest class in business.
Hmm. So
I heard a story about Professor Ramcharan talking to a businessman. And so the businessman said, I hear all these stories that, you're mentoring this kind of person in Amazon and whatnot. And, I am also working so hard. I'm so successful in my country, my business. So he said, all right, you are in what business? He said, I'm in real estate. So do you know what you do? He could not answer that question. What do you do? So he said, you compared, you want to do with Amazon. So if you go to Amazon, and you don't like something, can you return it? You say, yes. Do they ask you a question? You say, no. So do you do that in your business? The sermon was delivered. So we want all others to behave in a certain manner, but when it comes to your business, it doesn't matter what business I was in, what profession I was in, the principle applies. Are you the person that you want to deal with on the other side? Mm-hmm. I think with that, the whole universal law of love, universal law of fairness, everything will get established.
It's so simple and yet so deep. It's a very profound practice. Can you share? And then maybe this is not a fair question. It may be a hard question, but can you share maybe a moment or an example from that world where you had, you were at a crossroads, you're at a bridge, and this is why it's not fair, because there will probably be hundreds of examples, but where you could have done this or you could have done this, and the choice you made to sort of be the change that you wish to see in others, you made the harder choice, and you actually left with a feeling like, wow, that was absolutely the right thing. I didn't see that before, but now that I've done it, I have new eyes through which I'm looking at it, or I feel a different way. Can you share like an anecdote from your years in business where you had to take a tough choice?
It happened all the time. And so it's about, I remember very early into our underwriting business, a foreign bank had said that, we are doing one of these offerings and we want to offer some underwriting, some sub-underwriting. And the world of underwriting was small at that point of time. Only few people came in, and it was some 25,000 or 50,000 rupees at some underwriting. And people thought that underwriting is money for jam, because if the underwriting devolved, that means you get a claim, then it was pretty common to make excuses, this, that, etc., saying that, enforcing law in this country is so difficult. So people made compromises or just forgot. Mm-hmm. So this man made a phone call and I accepted it. And somehow he was also a junior officer at that point of time. He did not complete the paperwork. And there was a claim. Mm. So he called me with great fear and apprehension. He says, Vallabh, you remember that, I said, I remember. He said, now the shares got into difficulty and you have to pay up. I said, yeah, I will pay up. And I was so unpopular in my community because one guy pays up. Everyone else has no excuse. because the fact of underwriting is established. But, my colleagues and all, they were not used to this, but they were superb guys. When I said, look, how do you, if I said something, if someone else says something, we expect that person to honor it. The same applies to us, so let's pay it. And we didn't have large income or anything, but it didn't matter. So we paid. By and by, we became the most chosen underwriter. That these guys will pay, these guys will honor. And we said, if we underwrite, we got to work hard to save ourselves from that. So how it works, that when you make a promise you want to keep, you work harder, you become smarter. You become smarter, you don't get into difficulty. So I think when we take a shortcut, we don't become smarter. The magic of sadhana is that it makes you smarter, it makes you so capable that all the rewards come. It may seem that sadhana is doing the magic. It is your effort, that your qualification, excellence, etc., that just poise you for all the gains. That's how nature works.
Yeah, it's almost like nature's boons are waiting to be delivered to you. And if you are in alignment with these values, then a lot more can flow through you. And you're much more capable, not just financially, but in so many other ways. And but if we're not aligned, then all of a sudden it's like a cloud that through which the sun's light just cannot get through. Yeah, that's beautiful. Now, during that underwriting process, of course, one of your companies was Infosys that you had supported. But what's interesting is that when you're asked, like, who are your heroes? One of the people you mentioned is Narayan Murthy. I wonder if you can share a little bit about why he is your hero. Everyone knows him as, of course, the founder of Infosys. And he's a close friend of yours and has been for a long time. But why would you list him in this category of your most formative influences in life?
Mr. Murthy, if you look at distribution, 2 sigma, 3 sigma, 5 sigma, his ability to think beyond is just amazing. His ability to work hard, his ability to renounce are so unusual. So let me give an example. That, is pretty famous now, that the boy who served coffee in his office is a multi-millionaire. So his compassion that this boy serves, and if he gets some money, what will happen to his family, this, that, etc. Like that, he thought for all his colleagues that, this colleague of mine is younger, he just got married, then why don't I give him more salary? If they thought of a customer, so there's one famous story that, they had a big company it was very difficult for them to get a big company contract. And they got this big company's contract and they were working on something. And so I won't go into the complexity, but middle of the night at 1:30, they found a snag. And this was some big company's technology, and they found a snag. And so this engineer was working on it, called Mr. Murthy at night. And Mr. Murthy said, let's wake up the client. He said, wake up the client at 1:30. He says, yes, let's wake him up. It is so big because, we got to recognize, and they got to recognize that when we see something wrong, we really see it. Otherwise, they will, if you're complacent about your reaction, it will have a different, and it is not all engineered and, manipulative or anything. It just comes natural to him. So now if you just say, we all know the story of Eureka, Archimedes running out. Now, can you imagine? This man discovered something. He said, this is very big. Not that I'll become Archimedes and famous or something, but when we are in client service, when we find something that depending on this software, and we found a snag in the software, it is something very big. Now, see, this is the kind of discovery I had. Oh, this is the truth. If I am not a good student, I'm not a good student. Recognize it. And how everything changes. So it has to hit you very hard. Mr. Murthy is one person where things hit very hard. He hits very hard. And all with love, because he's nothing against you or anybody. So his life was full of decisions of that kind. where he just saw the truth very clearly and acted accordingly. So, and the second part about Mr. Murthy is gratitude. Gratitude is the greatest virtue. I mean, the most ordinary people, to us who are not endowed with anything, the moment they start, even in the apparently poorly endowed situation, the once you start counting your blessings, the whole world will be at your feet. You don't care for anything because what you got itself is so valuable. And Mr. Murthy is, I don't know anybody who has that sense of gratitude. And, I didn't write the article eventually, but I said in a country like India, where we are going through, a horrible situation, we had slavery of so many kinds, and we still have many slaveries still to fight, cultural, mental, etc. So when economic restraints are removed in any country, either the businessmen want to go and exploit it, or the businessmen are grateful about it. So I know two institutions in India who reacted to the freedoms with gratitude, and both of them are extraordinary institutions of this country. Mr. Murthy articulated and acted in a particularly conscious way, and it remains India's economic reforms would not have succeeded the way they have succeeded, to whatever extent they've succeeded, without Mufti Murthy's leadership. So he was a man of the moment who recognized, this country is being reformed, individual businessmen are being given freedoms. We must set a great example that how these freedoms can work for everyone's good. I haven't seen anyone come close.
Wow.
And how he lived for generations and what he did for his company, what he did for his sector are extraordinary. That story has been narrated, a few times, but still very superficially. So if you recognize that businessmen's duty is to enjoy all the license that they get most gratefully for everyone's good, any country, any community, any company can change dramatically. So Mr. Murthy, I can't stop talking about it.
No, it's great. I can feel your gratitude too. But you said two organizations. What would be the second one?
The second one is HDFC, started by Mr. H.T. Parekh.
I see.
So housing finance company, they had their own struggles. And then HDFC became HDFC Bank, HDFC Insurance, HDFC Mutual Fund, HDFC General Insurance, and they haven't stopped. Collectively, the market capitalization of that HDFC and all its babies is probably greater than anyone else in the country.
Yeah, no, it's wonderful. If we zoom out a little bit and look at the social sector now, you have recently, I don't know exactly when, but you started a foundation and you're looking out to be of service to the community. Now, the private sector is one thing. Social sector is a very different beast altogether. And so how from your eyes, with your experiences, first your own inner journey, and then your work in the private sector, how has that intersected with like the public sector, with the social sector?
So I don't think, so sometimes some statements or some actions are more pronounced, but actually it's a journey. We have been at it for a long time. And as I shared briefly last time, we saw it in my father, that, the foundation was our father, is our father. And how giving just came so naturally to him. And
can you share an example? Sorry to interrupt, but if you can share an example about your father and how he taught you about generosity, that would be powerful.
So, he came from Rajasthan. His service life started when he was 12, and, he wanted to clean up the street on which he lived. And one man, he said, I'll clean it all up. And then he got to commit the whole street people, all the neighbors to come and take certain actions and so on. And so that spirit was there in him. And when he started making first income, 25 rupees a month, he wanted to give at least 5% away to help someone. 25 was nothing for me. His need was 100, 200 rupees, but he wanted the 25. He said, I got 25. Or somebody needs that money even more than me. So what can I do? So he would help people every which way, not with money, then with advice, with inspiration, with connections, standing surety. He did all kinds of things. And we know that he would lift people from the street with his arms, put him in his car, take him to the hospital, to take him to whatever place. He had just no hesitation at all. So we have had so many stories of random people, strangers coming. And so, there's another story that we know that somebody from the community came to him, some young person with some spark. And so the family was not well off. The parents would fast so that they would save some food for the children. It was in that situation. So this boy had some spark. So he said, you're doing all these menial jobs. Why don't you start something? He said, what can I start? So father gave him 100 or 200 rupees or something. He became a hawker on the street, hawking things, hankies and naphthalene balls and things like that. In 10 years' time, he opened a store in one of the suburbs in Bombay. Then he opened multiple stores.
That's great. Yeah.
So his blessing and his inspiration for people, has been absolutely magical. And you can imagine if we are his children, how blessed are we?
So then if you reflect on how you're probably doing that a lot more now than you were perhaps in the earlier years, that to pay forward, to give back to society. So when you look out at society and with all your experiences, what is your lens? How are you looking out? Where do you think are the acupuncture points to sort of uplift the whole, not just like one particular problem, but
I don't know if I have a good plan or great insight about it. And I thought that at least personal transformation. So we started Truth Foundation, a Truth Talk, Satya Vigyan Foundation. But even before that, what we started was the Desh Apnaye Foundation. That in a democracy, if you do not recognize that democracy it works very well when you deserve democracy. But democracy is not rights, democracy is responsibilities. And once a democracy starts, gets a government, anyone in any position tends to forget the responsibility part and gets obsessed with the authority part. And therefore, the responsibility to strengthen the citizens, to make them aware of their duties and empowerment and etc., and how they should be, putting checks on the government, because in the day-to-day work, it's easy to, forget so on. That is just been going down. So there are only few evolved democracies. So I thought if we can strengthen the democracy, it would be great. So we have seen countries all around the world, including US, how democracy is weakened. And this government is running a very, very important, one of the most powerful programs to do what we are doing in India, that what we started 5 years or 6 years ago in India. That they have set benchmarks that how every student in America should have a certain awareness of history, civics, and certain inspiration and things like that. So we started that we thought could change the game. But it's a very long journey. And I don't think I can claim that we have really anywhere near cracked it, but we are at it. The second was about the personal transformation that, one transformed man can transform the whole nation, Gandhiji and all the great leaders and Buddha and Mahavira, etc., examples of that. The third thing I'm trying to work on is livelihood. That government runs many, many programs of, skilling and things like that. So we're now trying to get into the rural India and work with the farmers. That once the farmer has income, the farmer is motivated enough to get better education, to get better medical facilities, to ensure himself. But that state of absolute squalor, misery, poverty, it just paralyzes all the intelligence because the struggle is so large. We don't have to give them intelligence and education. They all have it. We just got to remove that pain, which, livelihood or lack of livelihood is imposing on them. So we are working on that. And related is that if you can provide water, then only their farm income can go up. So another NGO is working on water. this NGO that I'm a kind of partner or, big supporter of, we're also working on one other dimension, which is value education. And so, education gives you knowledge, information, certain skills, but has failed collectively around the world to impart values. Because the universities are not demanding values, jobs are not demanding values. So you pretend values, but we know the society would be a different place if we were educated in values. I don't know if you're aware, but Acharya Vinoba Bhave said something beautiful. He said, you can become a graduate in a college institution, etc., but you have to become a truth graduate.
Yeah.
So, this graduation in values is something that we are attempting. It's a fabulous experiment that is on, and we hope to be in all the government schools, which teach anywhere from 50 to 75% of the primary kids in the country, primary school kids in the country. So those are the 4 or 5 initiatives. And our family has been in it, in various ways that we don't like to talk about. These are in public space, I'm talking. But you just can't do enough. There are so many areas. But these are the 5 areas where we think we can make big, I think more work is required. Not many are doing it, and it can be meaningful.
That's wonderful. Before we go to questions from others, and again, if you have a question, you can just type it on the online chat, or you can email ask@servicespace.org. No conversation with you would be complete unless we bring in meditation, of course. Meditation and your personal practice of it has been a very core, central part of your existence, I would say, from the little I know of you. But you have been a long time Vipassana meditator. But what I'm curious about is what was the first seed that got you interested in meditation? And then what was it that was regenerative about it, that you kept on going and you kept on going, and you're in fact going to a 30-day meditation retreat in the SN Goenka tradition in a few days. And so this is a very big part of you. And so what is it that initially prompted you to get interested in meditation? And then what got you to stick with it?
So as a very young child, I remember my father talking about dhyan. And then we often saw him, sit in dhyan and be in some kind of trance. He had his prayer routine. We saw he was so blissful in his prayer also. And it kind of intrigued me, and he shared one experience about his own dhyan. So as a child, it was so mesmerizing for me, what it means. But by and by, through the experiences of life, I came across Jiddu Krishnamurti's first book, again in a particular state of mind when it is more receptive. Only when you are in pain and difficulty, you are receptive. So that happened. And then in 72,
which book was this?
Sorry?
Which book was this by Krishnamurti?
I think it was Commentaries on Life, 18th series.
Yes.
And then, of course, I got more into Krishnamurti. I had a chance to go and listen to him live. Used to come to the JJ School of Arts in Mumbai and sit under a tree and deliver his wonderful talks. So anyway, so I think then one after the other, then I came across a book where this question of how you can withdraw your senses and anchor yourself within it, and everything else happens by itself. And then the Vipassana book. And then the moment I heard the word Vipassana, I was still a CA student, but I knew I wanted to do it. And then I got to do it by and by. And then I found all the answers, because the questions had accumulated by that time when I went to my first course. And it has just been absolutely wonderful since then, benefiting from Vipassana, trying to serve in my little ways the whole movement of Vipassana. It is the most silent, the most transformative revolution going around the world. And you are very much a part of it, so I can't be telling you. I'm sure people around you know about it. You keep doing all the long retreats yourself, so we know how blessed we are.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I personally, for me, I don't think I would survive if it wasn't for that, because I would be so caught up. I mean, I understand renounce and enjoy, but I usually, my mind is so sneaky that it would enjoy first and then say, oh, I'll get to renounce, and it doesn't quite work. Gandhiji used to say renounce and enjoy, but if you start doing enjoy and renounce, it's not quite the same. And so, how do you make sure you lead with the renunciation? Without that awareness, it becomes very, very difficult. So it's remarkable that you have kept up that practice.
Just a little bit.
Yes,
since
please.
we talked about Ishavasya, and that the law is stated in that manner. Tena tyaktena bhunjitaha. First give up and then enjoy. So that's the edict. That's the law. We should not forget.
The order is very critical.
I mean, very important.
Exactly, because otherwise you can justify anything. It's like, I'll eat the ice cream today and then I'll renounce tomorrow. My wife would tell you I do that every day. Not every day, every time I eat ice cream. I wanted to put one of the callers on. There's a whole bunch of questions, so we'll see how we can include them in different ways. I wanted to invite on video Preeta to ask the opening question here.
Hello. Thank you for this really beautiful conversation. I was, in your favorite shloka obviously speaks of renunciation, and just this last little conversation you were having with Nipun about the order of renounce and enjoy. I'm a little struck by that because Vivekananda, I was also reflecting on Vivekananda, what he says in Karma Yoga, which he says that renunciation is true only if you first have something to renounce. And he says Buddha's giving up the throne was true renunciation because he had something to give up. And Vivekananda also says a man must be active in order to pass through activity to perfect calmness. So I'm just thinking about this in the context of your life and your journey in business. I mean, you've helped some of the most successful businesses, which are, in India, which are very much in a kind of a cumulative, acquisitive system. That is our system. So I'm just kind of curious, in your own journey, to what extent did that first stage of kind of being active in the world, contributing to the system as it is, how does that connect to your renunciation? And what is your sense of the ordering of that in your life?
So, for example, I was in service business. I used to advise people. So, you want to get a client, you want to get fees, you want to get reputation. And how does renunciation work? There's nothing, it's just all acquire. But you have a deep sense of service, for example, that you have that resolution of, being service-minded, putting your client's interest before your interest in all circumstances. That is renunciation. What is this renunciation? It's primarily your ego. And if you start recognizing that, oh, I'm so lucky to get anything, just that sense of gratitude transforms into very easy renunciation. Oh, this client is trusting me and giving me an opportunity to work for him or her. And that's how it happened with all my underwriting assignments. And, with Infosys, for example, people say that, oh, whatever happened. And I say, no, it was my duty. If someone trusted me to make my greatest effort to service them and to fulfill their obligation, how terrible I would feel if I trusted somebody to launch me in some path and he abandons me halfway. We cannot do that. So I think just that consciousness that how you are in a situation and there is so much to be grateful about, or there is a commitment, your renunciation begins then and there. So you don't have to have physical possessions. It is the mental problems that if you start renouncing. So when you're hungry, if you can think of someone else's hunger, then, even if you have nothing to eat, in your mind, you say, oh, if I get my bread, I will want to give, as I mean, in my father's case, he had only 25 rupees, he needed money, but it was not that after getting 25, he had the thought of He would have had that thought even before, that if I get some money, I want to give to somebody else. I think so. That's how it works. It is the attitude that starts developing in you, and then you can give up. So if you look at it physically, then obviously I need to possess something before I can give it up. But if you understand the essence of it, then it is about your ego, it is about your attitude, it's about gratitude. I hope it clarifies your question.
Yeah, go ahead. Peter, what are you going to say?
Just a type. Yeah, I was just gonna. I guess as you talk about truth and your and your deep commitment to it from a young age, it's a question I've had because I've been part of the system as well, the systems that surround us, and I guess just at what level does that insight, that consciousness, permeate to our questioning our participation in systems that may have harmful effects on others? And by that I mean economic, political systems, all kinds of systems.
I think it's a great question that, I think my rating must be very, very poor in it because I'm still in the system. And if you live, as Gandhiji used to say, that, accepting injustice is the same thing as committing injustice. And that's what you're saying, that if you are a participant in an unjust system, aren't you an abettor, a perpetrator? I think yes. You try to the extent that you can, move away from it. You try and become as good an example of it as possible. And that's a compromise. But at least that consciousness, if you have, that, these are borders which we will not cross. Or these are examples that we will set. By and by, you will want to do the least transgression, and that your organization, your own family, they start recognizing it. That's how you're bringing a change from within. I don't have the courage that Gandhi had, and I must admit it. So it's just a long way off. But a question like this is a great reminder. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And Preeta, by the way, Vallabh was used to work for Obama and drafted Iraqi constitution and Afghani constitutions, and has worked at the highest levels of society. And I know she's holding the very same question. And I think she would come to the same conclusion in the sense that, yeah, that is an aspiration, but, I don't have the capacity right now, but maybe I head in that direction. I think a lot of people have that in smaller ways, maybe not in such grand ways. There's a question from Yash. He says, obtaining knowledge about values is understandable and easy, but living them, particularly in a corrupt environment, is far more difficult, if not impossible. And he's saying that at some point you make these sacrifices, but if you make too many, your whole entity may shut down. You might have to liquidate your own entity. So how far do you go? I mean, I guess that's his question. And how do you find that balance?
So, all the values have to be lived values. And what you are not able to live, if you recognize is not my value yet, and you are modest and accepting it. And just as Preeta asked me a question that, are you a participant in an unjust system? And you don't fool around. You say, yes, I'm trying to reduce that participation, etc. So sacrifice that becomes a burden is not a sacrifice. It will cause such ego issues that, you'll be a mess. Mm-hmm. But if you recognize that tena tyaktena bhunjitaha, that, if you are able to work that in a gentle manner, in an insightful manner, that balance will come to you. I can guarantee you the balance will come to you. And, we have all these wonderful stories of Mahatma Gandhi, getting someone to give 20,000 rupees when the day he was to vacate the ashram because there was no rent. It turned out much later that it was Ambalal Sarabhai who came and gave that money to him. So all these things happen. I firmly believe, it is something that you have to experience to believe that you won't go bankrupt. And even if you did, you will have a fabulous restart. Sometimes, you have to burn down something to, create space for something beautiful. Have no fears. But if you force yourself, then it becomes an ego action. It has to be natural.
Yeah.
So, when we prepare ourselves by and by, And you say, I don't have to make a statement, I'm Gandhi, I'm a junior Gandhi. No, I'm just trying to be Gandhi. I'm a little bit of a Gandhi. I'm inspired by Gandhi or whosoever your hero is.
Right.
And by, all these things will become clearer to you.
Yeah, it's remarkable how we play like these Olympics in our minds, and we're like, I want to be like this, I'm like this, and we forget to be like ourselves, and that actually can be a real bottleneck. We have a question from, we'll go to Rajni next to ask her question, and then we'll go to some chat questions as well. And again, if people have something to ask, you can just write to ask@servicespace.org or just submit that form. Go ahead, Rajni.
Namaskar. Again, Vallabh Bhai, thank you so much. Always such an honor to hear you and to listen to you and just to feel your spirit. So I also have a slightly difficult question that sadhan shuddhi is the essence of Gandhiji's concept of trusteeship. And in the world at large, socially responsible investing has grown to, I think, almost 35 trillion now. But why has it been so slow to grow in India? And why even today are we finding it so difficult to connect sadhan shuddhi, purity of means, with, dynamism in the commercial space?
So, we need more Nipun Mehtas in India. When we address people by imposition and by principle, things don't change. When you address them with love. And so we have a 2nd October talk on Truth Talks. And, I'm opening the talk with this question. That a Vinoba can go and talk to dacoits between Acharya Vinoba Bhave and Jayaprakash Narayan. Almost 200 dacoits surrendered. So if you have the love of that kind, these things will change. So I think all those who want to see this, we need to inculcate more love in ourselves.
Oh, no,
Thank you so much.
Lovely seeing you, Rajni ji.
Rajni, isn't that always the case, right? It's ultimately it comes down to love, and love doesn't go by our ambitions. Like, I would love to change. There's this feeling like, wow, there's so much suffering in the world. Let's just solve it tomorrow. And there's a kind of, I don't want to say business mentality, but there's a acquisitional mentality of like, let's just do this faster. Let's do it bigger. Let's do it now. And it's not going to follow our egoistic plans. And so, but it is very important to keep at it though. So how, to not lose faith, to not to keep persisting. And there's a flavor of these questions here coming in. One is specifically around, challenges I think that you face, Vallabh Bhai. And how do you stay optimistic if a challenge starts to overwhelm you?
So, the last question or what you were saying and this question are kind of connected, and I want to go back to Buddha. So, he defined that what is religion, what is Dhamma. So he says, Swakhyato. He said that whatever your principle is it well articulated? And then he says, is it easily evident, self-evident? Sanditthiko. Then he says, Ehi Passiko. Can you ask people to experiment with it and not impose it? Then he says, Akaliko. He says it's eternal. Now, when you have that understanding of the principle that you want to do, the principle you want to follow and you want the world to follow, you have to have that confidence that my responsibility is only these 4. If I lose faith that, if it is not working in my lifetime, it's not good. It must work in my lifetime, in my tenure. It doesn't work. And so the answer to the challenges also is that you recognize your challenge is fighting your own laziness, fighting your own mental problems. And subject to that, you have done your bit to the best of your effort. That's all your challenge is. The world is an order, right? We started by saying that. There is an order. All this chaos and injustice you see, there is an order in it. We do not know. Don't try and change that order. Change your own order. That this is what I want to do. This is, I want to make an effort. I don't understand what is there behind the poverty, maybe his karma, her karma, whatever, etc. But I don't like this. I must help. I have helped. I have created a system, a platform. But oh, after all this impact, the way I thought didn't happen, then you're in the wrong place. Then your challenges will never get over. Because that's the nature of things. You cannot stop the day from turning into night and night into days. If you say a whole day, I one day, it doesn't happen. You do your bit. So my challenges are going down every day as I understand that my job is not to change the world, my job is to change myself.
Yeah. And there's a kind of humility, I think, that's embedded in that you have to accept that it's not about accumulating more and more and more power or media or money or power or fame. So you have a bigger hammer so you can change the world according to your will. This is almost the opposite, that it's about emptying. It's about becoming nothing. That even like your father, who seemed like he was a mystic doing his prayers every day, and no matter how little he had, he's thinking about other people from that. And that was not a calculated thing. And it almost goes down to the teaching of renunciation, right? The core teaching of the Gita. No, that's fantastic. We want to do a little special round of rapid fire questions with you. So this is, I'm going to invite Meghna, who has collected all of these from the back end and is just going to ask you a couple of rapid fire questions, or maybe more than a couple. I'll leave it to Meghna to take it away.
Thank you so much, Vallabh Bhai. It has been sheer joy to listen to you live and to listen to all your reflections in the earlier questions around your acts of kindness, the lineage, the gift of lineage that you have been brought in your practice in the world of business and brought love to it. So with that, we had a few questions that a bunch of the listeners and a bunch of us put together in a very rapid fire kind of a way. So the first question that we would like to ask is, your journey has been filled with various experiences, from spiritual to business to lessons to everything that has come up for you in momentum of inner callings and inner understandings. But in spite of that, if you could go back and alter one thing in your life journey, what would that be?
There would be a couple. One would be paying more attention to health. And second, recognize one's fears and fight them, articulate them better, and seek help in that. It's still a journey for me.
I love how through the talk you have said, this is still a journey for me and I'm still working towards it.
It's absolutely the truth.
It's inspiring. Speaking of truth, we all know Gandhiji's autobiography was titled Story of My Experiments with Truth. And a large part of your most recent project, which is also titled Truth Talks, dives into the experiments of truth with these different people that have come in conversation on Truth Talks. With that, what does truth mean to you, and what has been your experiments with truth?
It's being true to oneself. I cannot speak the truth that I do not know. I cannot sense it. I cannot feel it. So truth, what I know to be truth. So, Guruji Goenka ji had this beautiful saying, Bahar bhitar ek ras, saral swachha vyavahar, kathani karni ek si, yahi dharm ko sar. That when there is an alignment between what you say and what you feel, or what you do and what you feel, that's enough. So if I had a false belief, which I knew to be true, or I thought to be true, and later I recognized, I think that's fine for me.
Wonderful. It feels like you're actually anticipating my next question that's coming in the way you're responding, since you already recited this beautiful prayer. And speaking of poetry, as you also mentioned in the introduction video, you mentioned that you loved to write poetry when you were in your ashram as you were studying. Can you share any poem or few lines with us which feels very alive for you in the moment?
So in that journey of mine, there were moments of high and moments of low. And so one of them was a sense of loneliness. And it was kind of very nice also. So I said, Main aur meri tanhai. And meri tanhai na todo. Mujhe akela chodo. And it went on, and that how beautiful this Tanhai is, and how the world will not be able to understand this Tanhai. There was one about the mountain and river, and a conversation between them. I do not even remember, because this is the first time anyone asked me to recite my own poems, but it was about a conversation between a hill and a river. That hill is so proud of itself that, look, I'm standing so tall. And the river says, you stand tall in one place, doesn't matter. I'll go and meet every little guy around wherever I can. And it was a lovely conversation in my mind. And I said, okay, in my life, can I be like the river? So that was my inspiration.
Wow, that's beautiful. Always flowing, just as your responses. Thank you. My next question is, what reminds you to bring love to the world of profit?
Sorry, say that again, please.
What reminds you to bring love in the world of profit, to the world of profit?
So my own, feeling of, being insufficient, and that how terrible it feels. I mean, it happens to me all the time, that sense of being deprived. One little thing missing on your plates, one little thing missing in your wardrobe every day, and how it hurts. And when you think of others, that how many deprivations they have. Oh, you've got to do something about them. And it's not only just business, with your whole entity. How can you reduce that sense of deprivation? And sometimes that deprivation is desperation. How people just, go completely the wrong route. So if you can avoid deprivation, maybe you can avoid desperation. So you can do enough.
Wonderful. And the last question that I will ask is, can you share a moment when you deeply felt drenched in the law of love?
As I shared, from my after I lost my mother, and then, the sense of my brother and my sister, I think they were amazing moments. And I think, all these masters of mine, my father, Dr. Professor Rishi Kumar Pandya, Mr. Murthy, all of them at different points of time have been so amazing. So there are millions of moments when a colleague would have come and done something so extraordinary, or when he would have proven to be so trustworthy in a crisis, standing like a rock with you. My wife, how can I forget her? That unquestioning loyalty, unquestioning support to all my craziness. How could I have gone away to, Vipassana living? And she had no idea what was Vipassana. Aap ja rahe ho? Theek hai, go, please go. And how a fourth day onwards, every moment of my Vipassana, I feel grateful to her. So there are just too many acts to count, too many people to thank.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Thank you. Thank you, Meghna. Just a couple more questions here before we conclude our call. We have, there's one question from Rachna, and then I'll ask Rohit to articulate a second question, I think, which a lot of young entrepreneurs have. From Rachna, I think she's saying that, we have a living example of Gandhiji and someone who is, living by his values. But oftentimes others see us living these values and they see it as a roadblock, right, for their success, for their work with you, for your own success. Sometimes you see it yourself as a roadblock to success in the mainstream world. So how can we help ourselves and lead with values? And so I think that question, I would say, and maybe I'll invite Rohit to add the second question from a young entrepreneur, where I think there's a struggle that, okay, I aspire to, I want to accept reality as it is, and yet I'm not able to, and neither are people around me. Are they able to accept it? They don't encourage me to do this. Like, they encourage me to become successful in like the crooked ways, perhaps, because they're happy with that. They have a very different idea of success. So how do you hold that? And Rohit, you had a follow-up question to that. So maybe you can presence that and we can have Vallabh round it out with both of them.
Yeah, thank you. So Vallabh, my question is that, the more I see business, the organizing principle, the basic question which, more and more it seems to be starting with today is that, can I sell something in large quantities to a lots of people, right? And I think what it is resulting in, it's like, it's resulting in an overdrive of the consumption culture. I see that, there is beauty as, in the consumption, that it's all necessary for us. And there's also a part of, enjoying this beautiful life which has been given to us. But it seems that, with too much focus on consumption, we tend to miss out on so many deeper dimensions of our being, right? Like contentment, gratitude, friendships, and so on. Like I remember the story of one Mullah Nasruddin, which is like quite a favorite to me. He said that he had lost his keys once, and like, very frantically out in the market, in the bazaar, he was searching the keys and he was very distraught. And people around him saw his pain, and they thought that, they must help him, and they all came and started looking for the keys and trying to help him find the keys. And for hours they kept on searching. And after that, one wise person in the group asked Mullah, can you remember, like, where did you lose these keys? So he said, oh, actually I lost them at my home. So everyone was livid. That, hey, like, you lost the keys at your home, but what kind of a fool, you are to be searching here out in the open, outside your house, and involving all of us here. So he said, what do I do? Like, in the home, within the home, it was all dark, but here there's so much light, so it's easy to look here. So I think that sort of, makes me a bit concerned, that how do we actually, like, what's the ideal of business which you can see, right? That which can, promote that so many goods which are there to consume and make our life easy and better, but at the same time not take attention so much away, to not make false promises in a way that something which we won't receive from there, it does not promise us to be. So what's an ideal of conscious business, I would ask, that you could see today?
So starting with the first question, the young businessman. So, there are certain orders which are very clear to us, that if you wanted to get a Harvard MBA or, a Stanford engineering degree, you will have to study this many years and go through this, that, etc., and then you will get that degree. But simply because we read a book about Gandhi or any other hero, we somehow think, oh, by reading it and by resolving it, I can become that. You do not. There is an order there also. You have to go through it. So when you read Gandhiji's life, how he became Gandhi, how he became Gandhiji from Gandhi, he went through a whole process of sadhana. So I think if we are gentler to ourselves, or we are less egoistic, or we are more humble, he said, oh, I've been brought in a certain set of values. These are my aspirations, these are my challenges, these are expectations of me. But I want to follow this path. And there is a process of sadhana. Just as a student goes through sadhana or effort, to become somebody, so also to become this valued person and to be able to do business accordingly or whatever accordingly, you will go through a process. So if you don't get, just like a child, you don't take your failures or your faults very seriously, you laugh. You say, oh, I wanted to speak the truth, I didn't. Oh, I'm so bad, but I'll be more resolved. So, how can you, by just resolving, say, I become a Gandhi or a Nipun Mehta or whosoever? You don't recognize that there is a period of sadhana. If you recognize that, it'll be much shorter than, the whole 16 years or 18 years of education to become an MBA, and you will be a lot more successful. That's what we started with, that this law of love or law of truthfulness, etc., is so much more powerful. But you've got to recognize that there is a period of sadhana, period of graduation. Accept it, accept the failures, it'll be much simpler. The other question that the Mullah Nasruddin, now Mia Nasruddin, Mullah Nasruddin's question. So, again, the same thing, that inspiring, demonstrating, imposing. So demonstration is the best. That if I can demonstrate something, that I'm a leader, but I do not try and grow my influence in any manner which is not right. That's great. that influence will widen, will deepen only when its time comes. Any leader who wants to, follow the path of values and then start setting a timetable on it, that, oh, in the next 3 years, this must happen, it cannot happen. You're bound to get, you will make some shortcut, you will get frustrated, all frustrations and, mismatch in expectations will lead you to do something wrong. So I think, expecting that Amazon should stop selling is not possible. As you rightly said, that, can we inspire people to examine their consumption instead of asking them to stop consuming? Can we ask them to examine what is happening? Have you understood what goes behind that consumption? What happens after that consumption? People will wake up. And good thing is that I feel we are in a super spiritual age where, young people are getting to experience all the things that people like us took 40, 50 years to experience. They are experiencing at very young age. As things are more abundant, knowledge is more available. There are so many inspiring stories. Young people are coming to places like Vipassana, to the service space. Why? Because they're already going past consumption. They say, oh, we have seen how hollow it is, how toxic it is. So it's already happening. So you don't have to stop others. You have to do your bit and let nature decide the time and the extent of its influence. Then life becomes more beautiful.
Mm-hmm. That's fantastic. And you are heading into a 30-day meditation retreat this week and sometime soon. I'm just curious, do you have, what goes on through your mind before a retreat? Are you thinking, oh my God, that's going to be tough? Or I don't know what's going to happen, I'm ready to embrace it all? Or you're like, oh, this is going to be great. What goes on through your mind before you do? And for those that don't know, I mean, this is 30 days, no reading, writing, talking, no contact with the outside world at all. You're mostly sitting in a small cell. I mean, this is not exactly a try at home and without sufficient context. So this is a very profound thing. But what goes on through your mind right before a retreat, since we have you right before a retreat?
So, I just hate myself for complicating my life, which I find difficult to leave to go because there's so many responsibilities and undone things. And then so that is the toughest part for me. I've been to a 30-day, retreat earlier and many 20-day retreats. So, I know what goes on. And not that that's easy. That's extremely tough because, as you know, Nipun Bhai, what, Vipassana, it just digs so deep and takes all the dirt out to the surface. And it's so difficult to handle. It's your own dirt, which you've accumulated. And it comes in so many different forms and manner and thoughts and memories. And so you got to face that, but that's the only way you can cleanse yourself. So I think that process, I know, is going to be very tough because you can see lifetimes, come up in very bizarre manner, and it shakes you, it trembles you and whatnot. But I think this balance is simplifying current life so that you can go into this life of cleansing and, discovering your own secret much more than the secret of the universe, because your secret is the secret of the universe also. I think it's so wonderful. As I look forward really, really to that challenge. And I hate myself for, not simplifying my life enough so that it could be easier. So my determination now is to simplify my life. I've done, whether I've done enough or not, I should say, it's enough only when you say it's enough. It's never enough. So yes. I'm from
your angle, I think you are saying, how can I do more? But from our angle, looking outside, we're like, wow, you do so much, you have so many responsibilities, and you still are able to prioritize this, So it's actually quite an inspiration.
It's a balance that, you should be able to do this in a more easy manner. And so again, you got to be humble about it. I tried, I thought I'll be able to delegate, I'll be able to build an organization. It hasn't happened. So these are the mistakes and hurts and falls that, you don't like. You cry a bit, but, you wake up and you smile and you stand up and you smile and you move on. So it's a journey. It's a
This
journey.
is really great. This is really fantastic. It's a journey. It's a journey of renunciation, and it's a journey of enjoying after you renounce. Thank you, Vallabh. It's a real joy and it's a pleasure. I think it warms the heart to know that you're sincerely practicing in whatever whatever context you're planted in. That you're trying to be the lotus in the mud, so as they say. As a parting gift, as a sort of parting surprise before we end the call, and I'll give you a chance to share closing remarks after this. But we know Buddha and Buddha's teachings mean a lot to you, and so as a closing, as sort of perhaps a blessing as you head into your 30 days of cultivation. We asked two very dear community members, I can't say friends, that's where my mind was going, but they're monks, they're monastics. They have taken very high vows, and they're just beings of great compassion. And I feel honored to know them. And when we told them that, would you come in to share a blessing at the end for Vallabh to do this?
So grateful.
They immediately said yes. So Jin Chuan, Jin Wei, thank you for saying yes. We invite you to close with a prayer, or in any words if you have any as well.
Okay, is our sound okay? Can you hear us?
Can you hear us?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
So we're definitely honored to be here. I definitely think service space is our friends.
It's not just friends, and noble friends.
Yeah, we've learned so much from being able to be part of service space. But just maybe by way of introductions, we're monastics in the tradition of a Chinese teacher, Master Hua. And I was just thinking about something that related to what was being shared today. He often said how in society we're always, and in Chinese it's kind of a pun, so we're chasing after Ming and Li, which is fame and profit. And he said, what we really need to do is Ming Li, similar sounds. That means to understand principle, understand values, deeper values on how to be a person. So we thought what would be these deeper values is the four boundless hearts of kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity. And so we thought to send you off for the 30-day meditation retreat. We have one short chant of Guan Shi Ying Bodhisattva, who is the Bodhisattva of great compassion, embodiment of the four hearts, whose practice was listening, and then a brief reflection on loving kindness. So, okay. Namo Guan Shi Ying Bodhisattva 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 Namo Guan Shi Ying Husa. And so for our next chant, we'll put the lyrics on the screen here. I don't know if people can see it. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Yes, we can.
Okay, so if you want to chant along, please do. We'll do it 3 times. But this is a reflection on loving kindness that really touched our hearts.
Yes.
Wishing you and everyone else and all those we hold in our hearts well.
It's always good to have this 4 boundless hearts in the first act. Any challenges in the retreat arise, have a ready metta, karuna, mudita, and upekkha, and everything will go smoothly.
Okay. May we be safe and protected from inner and outer harm. May we be truly happy
and deeply peaceful. May we be healthy and strong, and physically at ease. May we take care of ourselves and live with well-being. May we be safe and protected from inner and outer harm. May we be truly happy and deeply peaceful. May we be healthy and strong and physically at ease. May we take care of ourselves and live with well-being. May we be safe and protected from inner and outer harm. May we be truly happy and deeply peaceful. May we be healthy and strong and physically at ease. May we take care of ourselves and live with well-being.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Jinwei Shi and Jinchuan Shi. We really appreciate it. And before we do our closing minute of silence here, I think a lot of us are saying, if we could do something in alignment with what you stood for, if we could contribute in any way, what should we do? How can we express our gratitude for our affinities?
I need to know more about you, align myself more with what you all wonderful people are doing, and so just force me to be part of you, enforce that on me. That's, you got my permission.
There it is. It's a beautiful thing. I do want to also, just in the spirit of gratitude, thank Smita Ben, who for a very long time has always been sharing her merits with everyone in service space. And that's actually how we got connected, Vallabh, originally. So, and I'm sure there are so many lineages of connections behind that make it all possible. And I also just want to be there's so many invisible people behind the scenes that make all this happen. And I'm just very grateful that all that conspired in this particular formation today, especially in the auspicious sort of momentum of you going into a profound 30-day retreat. So we end our calls like the way we begin them, just with a minute of silence in the spirit of gratitude, that if there has been goodness that is generated, may it flow out far beyond all our capacities of the known. May it reach the places where it needs to reach. So we invite everyone just to a minute of silence. Thank you.
Thank you so much.